At the charity gala, I found my daughter in the crowd. When I tried to talk to her, she avoided my questions. Her face was anxious, nervous. When she adjusted her bracelet, I saw something that made my blood freeze. Bruises, dark purple fingerprints circling her wrist. I forced myself to ask calmly. She answered in a trembling whisper. My husband did this. The district attorney. My son-in-law. I didn't yell. I didn't panic. I held her hand, drove her somewhere safe. I made calls. Exactly 72 hours later, my son-in-law's empire began to crumble because a federal prosecutor doesn't get mad. I gather evidence. Thank you for staying with this story. If you're still here, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from. And just a quick note, this story includes some dramatized elements added to enhance reflection and understanding. Any similarity to real names or places, purely coincidental, but the message behind it is worth hearing. I never believed in fate until the night I saw my daughter's eyes at the Justice for Children gala. Not the eyes I remembered, bright, fierce, challenging the world to keep up. These eyes were hollow, haunted. The eyes of someone who'd already given up inside, but whose body hadn't caught up yet. The Grand Riverside Hotel's ballroom was exactly the kind of place I'd avoided since Charlotte died. Too many people who wanted to talk about the old days when I was putting away crime bosses. Too many reminders that I used to matter in Chicago, but the Bar Association had insisted. Lifetime Achievement Award. My attendance apparently wasn't optional. 8 months since Charlotte passed. 8 months, and I still reached for my phone to call her. Dead. Claire's voice cut through the crowd. My daughter, Harvard Law partner track at one of Chicago's top firms. Arshaba. Years of making me proud. But something was wrong. I've spent 35 years reading people. Witnesses who lied. Defendants who thought they could outsmart me. You learn to see the tells, the body language that screams what words try to hide. Claire wore a black dress with long sleeves. Unusual for the overheated ballroom. October in Chicago could be unpredictable. But tonight, most women had abandoned their wraps. Yet my daughter stood before me, covered from wrist to neck, a silk scarf that seemed more strategic than decorative. Sweetheart, I pulled her into a hug. She stiffened. Claire, who used to tackle hug me. Claire, who'd cried on my shoulder through heartbreaks. Claire, who danced with me at her law school graduation. My daughter had just flinched at her father's embrace. You look beautiful, I said, carefully studying her face. Professional makeup expertly applied, but underneath I saw shadows. Weight loss. The careful way she held herself, like moving hurt. Thanks. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Blake's networking. He's always networking. The bitterness in those words. Blake Harrington, my son-in-law, district attorney, rising star. The kind of man who looked perfect on paper. Stanford Law. Impeccable record, family connections going back generations. The kind of man I'd learned in 3 decades prosecuting criminals to distrust on instinct. Can we go? Outside. Claire glanced around nervously. I need air. The terrace was empty. October wind carried the bite of coming winter. Claire walked to the railing, wrapped her arms around herself, and I saw it. A flash of purple blue above her wrist where the sleeve had shifted. Claire. I moved closer. What's going on? Nothing. She stopped, breathed. Dad. I need to show you something. But please don't get mad. 35 years. As a federal prosecutor taught me to control my reactions, to keep my face neutral. When witnesses described horrors, to bottle rage until I could use it. Nothing prepared me for what came next. Claire checked we were alone, then slowly lifted her left sleeve. The air left my lungs, bruises dark purple and sickly yellow-green spreading across her forearm. some fresh storm cloud dark, others days old fading to that greenish tint that meant repeated injury around her wrist. Finger marks clear as photographs. Someone's hand gripping hard enough to bruise bone deep. Who, not a question. Blake. Barely a whisper. But there's more. You need to hear all of it. She lifted her right sleeve. More bruises. Pulled down the scarf. Shadows on her neck. My hands curled into fists. How long? A year, maybe more. It started with yelling, pushing, then worse after Mom died. I wanted to tell you, but you were grieving. And I thought her voice cracked. I thought if I did everything right, he'd stop. Classic pattern. I'd prosecuted enough cases to know. Blame the victim. Make them think they're the problem. But knowing it academically and seeing it on your daughter's skin were different universes entirely. There's something else. Her hand moved to her stomach. Protective. I'm 12 weeks pregnant. The world tilted. Do he knows about you? Claire continued, words rushing now. Your real background, not just retired prosecutor, the organized crime cases, Moretti family, Sanchez, cartel, all your connections, FBI, DOJ, federal judges. He researched you 3 months ago. Ice water down my spine. Why, he wants to use them. Use you. He's running for attorney general next year. He thinks with your reputation backing him, he's unstoppable. 2 weeks ago, he told me she stopped breath hitching. But if I tell you anything, if I try to leave, he'll hurt me. Hurt the baby. Then he'll come to you. Tell you that either you help his campaign, or I pay the price. He said you'd have to watch your daughter suffer, knowing you could stop it. That's how he'd control you. 35 years facing killers, mobsters, cartel hitmen. I'd never felt rage like this. Claire's voice pulled me back. Please say something. I looked at my daughter. 28 years ago, I'd held her in the hospital and promised Charlotte I'd protect her. Always. I'd failed, but I wouldn't fail again. Does he know you're with me right now? He's inside meeting with the mayor. He'll notice soon. Nah, then we don't have much time. I pulled out my phone. Listen carefully. Starting tomorrow, things change. Blake thinks he knows who he's dealing with. He thinks his DA badge makes him untouchable. I pulled up a contact unused for 5 years. He's about to learn something. I continued. I didn't take down criminal enterprises by playing nice. I played their game better. And Blake just made the worst mistake of his life. What are you going to do? Whatever it takes. I heard the terrace door open. Footsteps. First you go back inside. Act normal. Can you do that? Claire nodded, wiping her eyes. How long? As long as it takes to destroy him. I touched her cheek gently. I'm getting you out. You and that baby. I promise. There you are. Blake's voice. Smooth, charming. Been looking everywhere, honey. I turned. Blake Harrington in an expensive suit, campaign poster smile. He moved to Claire's side, hand sliding possessively across her lower back. She stiffened. Most people wouldn't notice. I did. Malcolm. Blake's smile widened. Great speech tonight. Really inspiring. Justice prevailing and all that. Emphasis on those last words. He knew. I knew. Justice always prevails. I said evenly. Sometimes it just takes time. Indeed. His hand pressed harder against Claire's back. We should go early morning tomorrow. Campaign breakfast. He looked at me. I'm sure you understand. Of course. Drive safe. I watched them leave. Watched Blake guide control Claire through the crowd. Watched my daughter disappear, shoulders hunched under invisible weight. Then I walked to the far corner where the music was distant. I pulled out my phone and dialed. 2 rings. Gordon Mackenzie. Gordon, it's... Malcolm Sinclair. I need your help. Pause. Gordon owed me. 2009 The Moretti case. I'd taken a bullet meant for him. How bad is it, Malcolm? Bad enough that I need this completely off the record. Silence then. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Tomorrow 7 a.m. Pete's Diner on 47th, same booth. I'll be there. Pause. Whatever you need, I'm in. I ended the call and stood there. October wind biting through my suit. Blake Harrington had made a fatal mistake. He'd threatened my daughter, my unborn grandchild, tried to turn me into his weapon. He didn't understand that I wasn't some soft retired prosecutor. I was the man who'd taken down the Moretti family, dismantled the Sanchez cartel, put away corrupt senators. I'd spent 35 years learning how monsters operated. Now I was going to use every one of those skills to destroy one. Starting tomorrow, Pete's Diner hadn't changed in 30 years. Faded red vinyl, burnt coffee smell, and Doris still working the Sunday morning shift. Gordon Mackenzie was already in our corner booth when I walked in at 7 sharp, same booth where we'd planned the Moretti takedown in 2009. He stood when he saw me. Still had that cop posture after 26 years. Malcolm Gordon. I slid across from him. Doris poured coffee without asking. You sounded bad last night. Gordon said once we were alone. What's going on? I wrapped both hands around the mug. It's Claire. His expression shifted. He'd met my daughter enough times to know her brilliant lawyer, Charlotte's sharp mind, my stubborn streak. Blake's hurting her, I said quietly. Over a year now. I saw the bruises last night at the gala. Different stages, purple, yellow, green, systematic. Gordon's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent. Detective mode, listen first. She's 12 weeks pregnant, I continued. Blake knows who I used to be. He's threatened to use my connections against her, against the baby, if she leaves, or if I interfere. And he's the DA, Gordon. He controls the system. Jesus. Gordon leaned back. Blake Harrington, the golden boy everyone thinks walks on water. That's him. I drank the bitter coffee. Had her on that terrace last night, hand on her arm like he owned her. She flinched when he touched her. The diner hummed around us. Griddle sizzle, morning regulars clinking, silverware. The world kept serving pancakes while my daughter was trapped with a monster. You saved my life in 09, Gordon said, finally, voice steady. The Bureau wanted to leave me in there when the Moretts got suspicious. You fought for the extraction team. You made sure I got out alive. He leaned forward. I owe you everything, Malcolm. Everything. So tell me what you need. The knot in my chest loosened slightly. Someone I can trust. Someone not on Blake's payroll who doesn't owe favors to Judge Elliot Harrington. Off the books, Gordon confirmed completely. He pulled out a notepad. What's the play? Financial records first. I said, prosecutor brain engaging. Blake's a DA making maybe $180,000, but I've seen their downtown condo, the Cars Country Club membership. Claire makes good money at Parker Mitchell and Associates, but not that good. The numbers don't add up. Gordon was already writing. I've got a buddy in financial crimes. He can pull bank records quietly, phone records too. Claire mentioned he monitors her constantly. If he's tracking her, there's a digital trail, apps, location data, something. I can get that. Gordon tapped his pen. What about you? I'm doing what I do best, research. I leaned forward. Blake's been DA for 3 years. Assistant DA 4 years before that. 7 years of cases. I want to know his patterns. Which cases he pushed, which ones he let slide, who he prosecuted, and who he protected. Das don't get dirty overnight. If he's corrupt, there'll be breadcrumbs looking for leverage, looking for the truth. And when I find it, I'm burying him so deep he'll never see daylight. Gordon nodded slowly. This is going to get ugly. Blake won't roll over. And his father, Judge Elliot. That man has real power. I know. My voice came out hard. But he's hurting my pregnant daughter. I don't care how powerful they think they are. The guilt hit then sharp and sudden. How many signs had I missed? How many canceled lunches had I written off as Claire being busy? How many excuses about Blake needing her for events had I just accepted Charlotte would have seen it? She'd always been better at reading people, at sensing when something was wrong. But Charlotte had been gone 8 months, and I'd been so buried in grief that I'd failed to notice my daughter drowning. Hey, Gordon's voice cut through. Don't do that. These guys are good at hiding it. They make everyone think the victims are the problem. I nodded, but the weight stayed. I should call her, I said, suddenly reaching for my phone, just to check. Gordon's hand stopped me. Malcolm, if Blake's monitoring her phone, I don't care. I pulled up Claire's number. It rang 4 times. 5, 6. Then a voice answered, but not Claire's. Malcolm. Blake's voice was smooth. Courtroom pleasant. Calling kind of early on a Sunday, aren't you? My hand tightened. I was calling my daughter. Claire's resting. A pointed pause. Pregnancy is exhausting. First trimester especially. We certainly wouldn't want anything to complicate things. The threat wrapped in concern, delivered with an invisible smile. Let me talk to her. It's now she's sleeping. Malcolm, I'm sure you understand. Family is everything, right? We all want what's best for the baby. Another pause. I'm glad we talked last night at the gala. Good to know where we all stand. The line went dead. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, rage and fear roaring in my chest. Across from me, Gordon's expression had gone cold and professional. You are. He knows, I said quietly, setting the phone down. Carefully. Blake knows that I know, and he's tightening the circle. Then we move faster, Gordon said, already standing and dropping cash on the table. I'll start pulling records today. You dig into his cases. We find the crack in his armor and we blow it wide open. I stood too, every muscle coiled tight. Blake had just declared war. He thought he could control this because he controlled the system. He'd forgotten one crucial detail. I'd spent 35 years destroying men who thought they were untouchable, and I was about to do it again. Monday morning found me in the Northwestern Law Library, surrounded by 7 years of Blake Harrington's career in neat digital files. 35 years as a prosecutor had taught me one immutable truth: everyone leaves traces. The question was never if you'd find them, it was whether you knew where to look. Blake's record was impressive on the surface. 92% conviction rate as district attorney, highest in Illinois. The kind of numbers that got you profiles in legal journals and speculation about gubernatorial runs. But I didn't look at the surface. I looked at the cracks underneath. I started with the dismissed cases. Every DA has a few witnesses who disappear, evidence that falls apart, deals cut at the last minute. It's the nature of the work. But Blake had a pattern, and patterns tell stories. In the past 3 years, 15 cases involving wealthy defendants had been dismissed after initial indictments. 15. All quietly, most with sealed records. A real estate developer accused of fraud. A hedge fund manager charged with embezzlement. A pharmaceutical executive facing kickback allegations. I pulled up the case files, referenced the defense attorneys, different firms, different strategies, but one commonality. Every defendant had significant financial resources, and every case had been dismissed within weeks of Blake's office receiving, according to the public dockets, new evidence that undermined the integrity of the prosecution. New evidence. That was the phrase he used every single time. My phone buzzed. Gordon financial report attached. You're going to want to see this. I opened the file. Bank records for Blake and Claire's joint accounts plus Blake's personal accounts going back 5 years. Gordon's buddy and financial crimes had come through. The deposits jumped out immediately. 5,000,000 here. 8,000,000 there 120 inches. March 200000 last October. All labeled as consulting fees or speaking honorariums, but with no corresponding tax documentation that Gordon could find. Over 3 years, Blake had deposited nearly $1.4 million in unexplained income. ADA, making $180,000 a year, doesn't pull in $1.4 million inside money without someone noticing. Unless that someone is very good at hiding it. Or unless the people who should notice are looking the other way. I sat back, pieces clicking into place. The dismissed cases, the deposits, the timeline matched almost perfectly. Major deposits within weeks of high-profile cases being dropped. Blake wasn't just a corrupt DA. He was selling justice. My phone rang. Unknown number but a Chicago area code. Mr. Sinclair, a woman's voice, nervous. This is Janet Fitzgerald. I'm class assistant at Parker Mitchell and Associates. I straightened Janet. Yes, is Claire. She's fine. I mean, she's here at work. But Mr. Sinclair, a long pause. I know this isn't my place, but I'm worried about her. She's not herself lately. Very different. Different how she's always been focused, sharp. But now she's scattered, anxious. She canceled 3 client meetings last week, won't take lunch breaks, and she wears long sleeves every day, even when it's warm in the office. Janet's voice dropped lower. Her husband calls constantly, like every hour. And when she sees his name on the screen, she gets this look like she's afraid. I finished quietly. Yes. Relief flooded her voice that I understood. I thought maybe I was imagining it, but Mr. Sinclair, is she okay? No. No, she's not. But I couldn't say that to her assistant. I appreciate you calling. Janet. Keep an eye on her for me. Of course. After we hung up, I stared at my laptop screen without seeing it. Scattered, anxious, constant phone calls. The isolation was getting tighter. Blake was making sure Claire had no space to breathe, no moment to think, without his control pressing down on her. I needed to see her. Just to look at her face to know she was still fighting. The cafe near her office building was busy at 4:30. The late afternoon crowd, grabbing coffee before the commute home. I sat at a corner table with a clear view of the entrance waiting. She appeared at 4:47, moving through the crowd with her head down, long sleeves, despite the mild October weather, sunglasses, even though she was indoors. Her hand rested protectively over her stomach, a gesture so automatic she probably didn't realize she was doing it. My daughter hiding in plain sight. I didn't approach, couldn't risk Blake's surveillance catching us together. But our eyes met across the crowded cafe for just a moment. Recognition flashed in her face, then fear. She shook her head, a tiny movement, barely perceptible. A warning. I followed her gaze to the window. Blake's black BMW was parked across the street, engine running. I couldn't see through the tinted windows, but I didn't need to. He was watching, waiting, making sure she went exactly where she was supposed to go and nowhere else. Claire grabbed her coffee and left without looking back. I sat there for another 20 minutes, rage simmering under my skin. He had her on a leash, electronic monitoring, constant calls, physical surveillance. She couldn't move without him knowing, couldn't breathe without his permission. And she was 12 weeks pregnant with his child, which he was using as leverage to keep her trapped. My phone buzzed with a text from Gordon as I walked back to my car. Got a name for you. Diana Beaumont, high-end political fundraiser. Attached photo from this morning. I opened the image. Blake in an expensive suit entering a luxury high-rise on the Gold Coast. The kind of building with doormen and private elevators and monthly HOA fees that cost more than most people's mortgages. Not the kind of place a DA visits in the middle of a workday unless he's got a very good reason. I pulled up Diana Beaumont's profile on my phone. Sanchez C. Beautiful. Divorced CEO of Beaumont. Consulting a firm that specialized in connecting wealthy donors with political candidates. Her client list read like a who's who of Illinois power brokers. And according to her social media, she'd been at the same Justice for Children gala on Saturday night where I'd confronted Blake. The pieces were coming together now, forming a picture I could finally see clearly. Blake wasn't just corrupt. He had a partner, someone with access to money, power, and connections, someone who could funnel his illegal income through legitimate-looking consulting fees, someone who benefited from having a DA in her pocket, Diana Beaumont, the mistress, the money launderer, the co-conspirator, and I was going to use every single piece against him. Wednesday morning found me parked across from a Gold Coast high-rise with a clear view of the penthouse level. 35 years prosecuting organized crime had taught me the basics of surveillance patience, a good thermos of coffee, and the ability to disappear in plain sight. Diana Beaumont lived on the 23rd floor, a corner unit, the kind of real estate that cost 7 figures, and came with concierge service, private elevators, and neighbors who valued discretion, perfect for secrets. I'd been there since 6:00 a.m. By noon, I had my answer. Blake's black BMW had entered the underground garage at 7:43 Tuesday night, according to the photos on my phone. The doorman nodded at him like a regular. No surprise. If you're sleeping with a penthouse resident, you tip well. He didn't leave until 6:17 Wednesday morning. I sat in my car in the pre-dawn dark and watched him emerge in yesterday's suit, coffee cup in hand, wearing that satisfied look men get when they think they're untouchable. He checked his phone, climbed into his BMW, and drove toward the DA's office. My daughter was home alone, 12 weeks pregnant with his child, probably wondering where he'd been all night, and he was checking emails while walking out of his mistress's building at dawn. The rage settled into something colder, calculated, useful. Gordon's text came through at 8:30 with Diana's background. Diana Beaumont, 37, CEO of Beaumont, consulting political fundraising and donor coordination. Clients included half the state, legislature, 3 congressmen, and the governor's campaign. Divorced in 2014, no children. Penthouse purchased in 2019 for $2.8 million cash. Prior residence, Lake Forest family money. Father was a venture capitalist. I read it twice. Diana wasn't just Blake's mistress. She was his gateway to power, the kind of access a district attorney needed if he planned to run for attorney general, governor, or senate. She had money, influence, and relationships that could elevate or destroy careers. According to Gordon's Financial Review, she'd been laundering Blake's illegal income through her firm as advisory fees. She wasn't naive. She wasn't manipulated. She was complicit. That made her leverage. At 1245, Diana exited the building. In person, she looked different than the woman in Blake's curated social photos. Tailored black suit, designer handbag, sunglasses that probably cost more than my first car. She moved with the confidence of someone who'd never been denied anything. I followed her 3 blocks to Spia, where entree started at $50 and the wine list needed explanation. She met 3 men at a corner table. One was a state senator. Another was a real estate developer whose fraud charges had vanished 6 months earlier. Campaign donors, fundraisers, power brokers. I watched for 40 minutes. Diana smiled, laughed, ordered wine. The senator leaned in close. Promises were exchanged in that invisible currency where favors get logged and debts remembered. This was her ecosystem. Elegant rooms, powerful men, corruption dressed as networking. She'd brought Blake into it, and she'd made herself vulnerable because people like Diana, people who've never faced consequences, don't know how to respond when the game flips. My phone rang Thursday afternoon. Unknown number. Mr. Sinclair. A young woman said, strained. This is Stephanie Lawson. I'm a friend of Claire's. We went to law school together. I remembered her. A bridesmaid, a lifetime ago. I'm worried about her. Stephanie said quickly. She's cut me off. We used to meet every Tuesday. She's candled 6 times. When I last saw her, her phone rang and the look on her face. What kind of look? Terror. Just for a second. Then she went cold. Formal. Said she had to leave. Her hands were shaking. 3 weeks ago around, when Blake would have learned about the pregnancy. Has she mentioned Blake? I asked. No, she avoids his name. It's like he erased her. Isolation control. The oldest playbook in domestic abuse. I'd prosecuted it for decades. Keep reaching out, I said, even if she doesn't answer. Is she in danger? Stephanie asked. Yes. And time was running out. I'm handling it, I said. After the call, I stared at Diana Beaumont's address. Blake had the badge, the office, the system. Diana had what he needed. Money, donors, a future. She was the weak link. I'd spent my career dismantling men who thought they were untouchable. Gang leaders, corrupt politicians, killers protected by money and fear. They all depended on someone who could be turned. Accountants, fixers, mistresses. Diana Beaumont was playing at power, hosting fundraisers, wearing confidence. Like armor, believing family money made her safe. She had no idea what real consequences felt like. But she was about to learn, because tomorrow morning she was going to meet a man who had faced monsters and who had absolutely nothing left to lose. Thursday morning, 1100, Diana Beaumont opened her penthouse door in a cream silk robe, hair tasseled, yesterday's makeup smudged under her eyes. She stared at me for 3 seconds before recognition hit. Mr. Sinclair, this is unexpected. We need to talk. Curiosity won over caution. She stepped aside, let me in. The penthouse was pure Gold Coast luxury, floor-to-ceiling windows. Overlooking Lake Michigan, white marble furniture that cost more than most people's cars. Wealth that didn't whisper. It stated. Diana poured coffee, buying time. Her hands were steady. She thought she could handle this. What brings you here? She asked, leaning against the counter. You're sleeping with my daughter's husband, laundering his bribe money through your consulting firm, and you're complicit in his abuse of a pregnant woman. The coffee cup paused halfway to her lips. Then she set it down carefully. Blake told me about you, she said quietly. The legendary Malcolm Sinclair. He was worried you'd figure it out. He was right. She smiled, cold, knife-edged. What do you want? The truth. Fine. Diana's composure returned. Yes, I'm having an affair with Blake. Yes, I know about his financial arrangements. Yes, I know he has a complicated relationship with Claire. Complicated? My voice went flat. That's what you're calling domestic violence, she shrugged. Claire is an obstacle. Blake has real ambitions. Attorney General, maybe governor. He needs the right partner. Someone who understands power. Not someone falling apart every time he raises his voice. White-hot rage, Arctic cold control. And the baby? I asked quietly. After the baby is born, things will be simpler. Diana chose her words carefully. Claire will have postpartum issues. Very common, very understandable. Blake gets custody. Claire needs long-term treatment. And Blake moves on with his life. She was describing murder over coffee in a silk robe like it was a business merger. Dick, here's what's going to happen. I said, prosecutor calm. You're going to tell me everything. Every bribe Blake took, every case he threw, every deposit you processed. Diana laughed. Or what? Blake is the district attorney. He controls investigations. Who will believe you? I'm not going to the police. Something in my tone killed her smile. I spent 35 years as a federal prosecutor, organized crime division. I put away mob bosses, cartel leaders, corrupt politicians. I took a step closer. I still have friends at the Department of Justice, the FBI, the IRS. Friends who owe me favors, friends who'd love to investigate a corrupt DA and his money laundering accomplice. Diana's hand tightened on her cup. Option A, I continued. You give me everything you have on Blake. Every text, email, recording, financial document, enough evidence to bury him. Then you pack a bag and disappear. Change your name, vanish. Maybe I don't make that phone call to the FBI. And option B. Untap up or FBI raids this penthouse and your office. IRS freezes every account. Your client list gets subpoenaed. Every politician you've worked with suddenly can't remember your name. Your father's venture capital firm gets investigated for money laundering. And your face is on every news channel as Blake Harrington's co-conspirator. The color drained from her face. You can't prove. I can prove the money laundering right now. I have both your bank records. I pulled out my phone, pressed a button. Diana's voice played back. After the baby is born, things will be simpler. Her eyes went wide. You're good at playing power games with donors, I said, but you've never faced real consequences in your entire privileged life. Diana's hand shook as she set down the coffee cup. I have everything, she whispered. Texts, emails, recordings. Blake thought I was documenting our relationship, but I kept everything about the money, his deals, to protect myself if things went bad. Smart. Self-serving but smart. She walked to a wall. Panel opened a hidden safe, pulled out a thumb drive and folder, 6 months of communications, financial spreadsheets, audio recordings about the dropped cases. Her hand trembled. I want immunity. You're not negotiating. I need some guarantee. 24 hours, I interrupted. Pack your essentials and get out of Chicago. After that, I'm calling the FBI with this evidence, whether you're here or not. Your choice is whether around when they come looking. I took the thumb drive and folder. 24 hours, I repeated. Choose wisely. At the door, I looked back. One more thing. If Blake somehow finds out about this conversation, if anything happens to Claire or that baby in the next 24 hours, I'll assume you warned him, and there's nowhere you can hide that I won't find you. I left her standing there, small and terrified in her crumbling empire. Outside in my car, evidence on the seat beside me, I allowed myself one moment of victory. I just armed myself to destroy Blake Harrington completely. But the clock was ticking. 24 hours until Diana might run. Unknown time until Blake figured out something was wrong. Somewhere in this city, my pregnant daughter was trapped with a man planning her death. I'd won this battle. Now I had to make sure I didn't lose the war. Friday afternoon, Diana's insurance files arrived via courier, delivered through a lawyer whose name I didn't recognize and would probably never see again. Smart. She was already disappearing. 300 pages, a thumb drive with 6 months of audio recordings, and enough evidence to destroy Blake Harrington 10 times over. I spread it all across my home office desk and started reading. The text messages came first. Blake and Diana discussing my daughter like she was a business problem to solve. Blake, she's getting suspicious. Asked about the Riverside account. Diana, handle it. You're good at handling her, Blake. I am. But pregnancy is making her emotional harder to control. Diana, then we accelerate the timeline. After the baby, the Claire problem resolves itself. I had to stop reading, put the papers down, breathe. They'd written it in texts, discussed my daughter's murder in casual messages between meetings and fundraisers. The CLA problem resolves itself, like she was a scheduling conflict. The financial records were worse. $450 0 inches documented bribes over 3 years. Defendants' names, case numbers, dismissal dates, corresponding deposits. Diana had kept meticulous spreadsheets, every transaction logged, every case tracked. 15 cases, 15 criminals who'd walked free because they'd paid Blake to make charges disappear. Drug dealers, white-collar, fraudsters, violent offenders, all buying justice from a DA who was supposed to be protecting the public. And Diana had documented everything. Insurance against Blake ever turning on her. The audio recording started at 11 p.m. I plugged in headphones, hit play on the first file. Blake's voice filled my ears. Smooth, confident, the same voice I'd heard at the gala. You have to understand, Diana, control is everything. Claire thinks she has choices, but she doesn't. I monitor her phone, her location, her bank accounts. She can't move without me knowing. Can't talk to anyone I don't approve. The isolation's been perfect. Diana's laugh. You sound like you're describing a prisoner. I am. That's exactly what she is. And after the baby comes, it gets even easier. Postpartum depression is very convenient, very believable. No one questions when a new mother needs psychiatric care, especially when her husband is the district attorney trying so hard to help her. I ripped the headphones off, stood up so fast my chair crashed backward. He'd said it. Blake had actually said it out loud. The plan to commit Claire after the baby was born, to have her declared mentally incompetent to take custody of their child and lock my daughter away in some facility where she'd never be found, or worse. It was past midnight when I finally stopped reviewing evidence. The house was silent except for the clock ticking on the wall. Charlotte's clock, the one she'd insisted we buy for the kitchen. The one Claire's throat. I'd moved to my office after she died because I couldn't stand the empty kitchen without her. Her photograph sat on my desk, taken 10 years ago at Claire's law school graduation. Charlotte smiling, arm around our daughter, both of them laughing at something I'd said. I don't know if I'm fast enough, I said to the photograph. What if I can't save her? What if I'm too late? The clock kept ticking. Charlotte kept smiling, and the memory came flooding back, her final days in hospice when she'd made me promise. 8 months ago, early March, the hospice room smelled like antiseptic and dying flowers. Charlotte's hand, and mine, so thin, I could feel every bone. Her voice barely a whisper. Promise me, you'll protect Katie. She'd always called Claire that at home. Katie, our little girl, even when she grew up and became a brilliant lawyer. Charlotte, don't promise me Malcolm. Her grip tightened. She's stronger than she knows, but she'll need you. Blake. She coughed, struggled for breath. Blake isn't what he seems. Watch him. Promise me you'll watch over her. I'd thought she was confused. The morphine, the cancer in her brain. Blake had seemed perfect, then successful, attentive, ambitious, everything a father could want for his daughter. I promise, I'd said. Always. I'll always protect her. Charlotte died 2 days later. I broke that promise. I said to her photograph now. I was so buried in grief that I missed every sign, every canceled lunch, every long-sleeved shirt in summer every time she flinched. You saw it, didn't you? Even dying, you saw what I was too blind to notice. The clock ticked. Charlotte smiled. But I'm going to fulfill it now. I continued. I'm going to save our daughter, and I'm going to destroy the man who hurt her. I promise you that. Saturday evening, I was reviewing the evidence for the third time when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Then something made me pick up. Mr. Sinclair, a man's voice. Young, nervous. This is Lucas Harrington Blake's younger brother. We need to talk. Every muscle in my body went rigid. How did you get this number from Claire's file at? My firm. Mr. Sinclair. I know this sounds insane, but I need to meet with you in person soon. Why would Blake's brother want to meet with me? Lucas's voice dropped, filled with pain. Because I saw Claire at our family dinner 2 weeks ago. I saw the bruises she tried to hide under long sleeves. I saw how she jumped when Blake touched her arm. I saw the fear in her eyes when he told her it was time to leave. I said nothing, waited. I'm a defense attorney, Lucas continued. I've spent my whole career reading people, spotting when clients are lying. Claire wasn't lying. She was terrified. And I've watched my brother for 3 years now. Watched him change. Watched him become something I don't recognize. His voice cracked. I can't stay silent anymore, Mr. Sinclair. I want to help you take him down. A twist I hadn't anticipated. Blake's own brother offering to betray him. Could be a trap. I said carefully. It's not. I swear to God it's not. I have information. Things about my father, about Blake's cases, about family secrets that go back years. Meet with me, please. I looked at Charlotte's photograph, at the evidence, spread across my desk, at the audio player still paused on Blake's voice discussing my daughter's imprisonment. When and where? Tomorrow, Sunday morning, Lincoln Park, North End, 10000 a.m. I'll be alone. The line went dead. I sat there in the silence of my office, surrounded by evidence of corruption and conspiracy and planned murder, and wondered if I could trust Lucas Harrington Blake's younger brother, the defense attorney, the black sheep of a family. That seemed perfect on the surface. Either he was genuine, a man whose conscience finally woke up, or he was bait in a trap. Either way, I was going to that meeting because I'd made Charlotte a promise, and I'd already broken it once. Sunday morning, 1000. I arrived at Lincoln Park 20 minutes early and positioned myself near the north entrance where I could observe anyone approaching. Meeting Blake's brother required caution. This could be genuine, or it could be a trap designed to expose me. The park was quiet. Joggers passed along the lakefront path. A few families pushed strollers. No one paid attention to a 65-year-old man sitting on a bench, pretending to read the Tribune. Lucas Harrington appeared at 9:58 exactly on time. I recognized him from the photographs Gordon had obtained. He was 3 years younger than Blake, with the same dark hair but softer features. He wore jeans, a northwestern hoodie, and sunglasses despite the overcast sky. He looked exhausted, like someone who hadn't slept in days. He noticed me and approached slowly, hands visible, movements controlled. Smart. Mr. Sinclair, Lucas, I said without standing. Sit down. Slowly. He sat at the far end of the bench, leaving a deliberate space between us. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure I should. Lucas removed his sunglasses. His eyes were red and haunted. Whatever he had come to say was clearly weighing on him. I need you to understand something first, he said quietly. I'm not here because I suddenly grew a conscience. I've known what Blake was for years, What my entire family is, and I did nothing. Why now? I asked. Because I saw Claire, he said. His voice cracked. At our parents' house last Tuesday monthly family dinner. Blake brought her. She wore long sleeves, even though it was 70 degrees. Barely spoke, barely ate. When Blake put his hand on her arm to say it was time to leave, she flinched. Just for a second. Then she smiled and followed him out like everything was fine. He stopped and swallowed hard. I followed them to the driveway, pretended I needed to ask Blake something about a case. Her sleeve rolled up and I saw the bruises, purple, yellow, green, different stages. He looked at me. I'm a defense attorney. I've represented enough abusers to recognize the pattern. And I've known my brother long enough to know exactly what he's capable of. How long have you known? I asked. Since we were kids. Blake was always off, cruel to animals, violent. Our parents called it high spirits, boys being boys. But he enjoyed hurting things. And when he got older, law school second year, a girlfriend reported him to campus police for assault. My father made it disappear. Paid her $50,000 to drop the charges and transfer schools. Paid the campus police chief another 20 to lose the paperwork. The pattern was familiar. There were others, Lucas continued. Another girlfriend, a paralegal at his first firm. My father fixed everyone, paid them, intimidated them, used his position as a judge. My mother stood by and preserved the family image. And you? I asked. Lucas looked away. I stayed silent, told myself it wasn't my responsibility, and became a defense attorney, and kept my distance, but silence is complicity. I enabled him. Why tell me now? Because Claire is pregnant. His voice trembled. 12 weeks. Blake announced it at dinner like a trophy. All I could think was that he's going to kill her. Maybe not directly. Maybe it'll look like suicide or an accident, but she won't survive him. He pulled a USB drive from his pocket and held it out. My father keeps records. Every bribe, every favor, every case he fixed. 30 years of corruption. He documents everything as insurance, including Blake. I took the drive carefully. How did you get this? I copied it last night while they were at a charity gala. He doesn't know yet. Why should I trust you? I asked. You're his brother. Because I'm willing to testify, Lucas said in open court. Against my father and my brother. I'm willing to lose everything if it means Claire and that baby live. You lose your career. I've already lost my integrity. I studied him. The guilt felt real. He detailed the cases. Judges bribed, evidence buried, witnesses threatened, a network built over decades. It's all there, he said. Enough to take down Blake and my father. I stood. Lucas followed. You'll testify under oath? I asked. Yes, there's no going back. I know. I shook his hand. Welcome to the right side. Thank you for letting me try. We walked away in opposite directions. An inside man, a Harrington betraying his own blood. Diana had given me evidence against Blake. Lucas had given me evidence of an entire criminal enterprise. Together, we might finally save Claire and destroy the Harrington family for good. That evening, I drove to the cemetery, something I hadn't done since Charlotte's funeral 8 months ago. The Northwest Chicago cemetery was quiet at dusk, autumn leaves scattered across paths between headstones. I found Charlotte's grave by memory, third row under the oak tree she'd loved. Charlotte Marie Sinclair, 1958 to 2023. Beloved wife and mother. I sat on the cold ground beside her stone. I didn't care about the damp grass or the chill in the October air. For the first time in months, I needed to talk to her. I failed Charlotte. My voice sounded strange in the silence. Our daughter is suffering, and I didn't know. I was so buried in losing you that I couldn't see she was drowning right in front of me. The wind moved through the oak branches. No answer, just the rustling of dying leaves. I remembered her last days. The hospice room, her hands so thin in mine, her voice barely a whisper. Promise me you'll protect Katie. I'd promised, and I'd broken that promise by being blind. A different memory surfaced. Claire at 10 years old crying in the kitchen after school. Some boys had been bullying her, calling her names, pushing her in the hallway. I'd knelt down, wiped her tears, looked into those brown eyes that had Charlotte's fire in them. You're smarter than them, I'd told her. Bullies are afraid. Inside. That's why they hurt people. But you're going to be brilliant, strong. You're going to change the world, and they're going to be nothing. Remember that. She'd hugged me so tight. Promise, Daddy. Promise, baby. Always. I taught her to be smart, to be strong, to stand up to bullies. And now she was trapped with one. And all that strength I'd tried to give her was being beaten down day by day. Another memory. Claire's law school graduation. The three of us standing together for a photo. Charlotte already sick, by then losing weight, her smile brave but tired. Claire in her cap and gown glowing with achievement. Me between them, arms around both my girls, thinking we had time, thinking we'd have years. Charlotte died 6 months later. Claire married Blake 8 months after that. And I'd let my grief blind me to my daughter's pain. What if I'm not enough, I said to the gravestone. What if I can't save her? What if I'm too late, too slow, too? My phone buzzed. Probably Gordon with an update. I almost didn't look, but something made me open my wallet first. Inside was a photo I'd carried for 23 years. Claire at 10, missing her front teeth, grinning at the camera. The same day I'd told her she'd change the world. That little girl trusted me, believed me when I said I'd always protect her, and I'd failed her. But I wasn't done yet. I stood up, brushed dirt off my pants, looked at Charlotte's name carved in stone. I'll save her, I said. I don't care what it costs. I don't care who I have to destroy. I'll get our daughter away from him, and I'll make sure he never hurts anyone again. My voice was steady now. I won't fail again, Charlotte. I promise you that. The wind died down. The cemetery was silent except for distant traffic. I walked back to my car, started the engine, pulled onto the road toward home. My phone rang. Gordon Malcolm. His voice was tight. We've got a problem. What kind of problem? What is Blake? Just filed a search warrant for your house. Claims he has evidence you're interfering with an ongoing investigation, possibly tampering with witnesses. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. When Judge signed it an hour ago, they'll execute it tomorrow morning, probably around 8. Malcolm, he's targeting you directly. He knows you're gathering evidence against him, and he's trying to destroy you first. I drove in silence for a moment, processing. Blake wasn't just defending anymore. He was attacking, which meant Lucas breaking into Judge Elliott's office had triggered something, or Blake had simply realized I wasn't going to back down. Let him come, I said finally. Malcolm, the evidence isn't at my house. Diana's files are with my attorney. Lucas's USB drive is in a safe deposit box. Blake can tear apart my entire house, and he won't find anything. He's trying to intimidate you, make you back off. Then he's miscalculated. I pulled into my driveway. The house was dark, empty. It had been empty since Charlotte died. I've spent 35 years prosecuting men who thought they could scare me into silence. Blake's going to learn the same lesson they did. Be careful. He's desperate, and desperate men do dangerous things. So do fathers protecting their daughters. I hung up and sat in the car looking at my house. Tomorrow morning Blake's people would ransack it, search my office, my bedroom, my life, looking for anything they could use against me. They wouldn't find it because I'd learned long ago to keep evidence where my enemies couldn't reach it. But the search warrant meant something else. The war had officially started. Blake knew I was coming for him, and he was going to fight back with everything he had. His position as DA, his father's corrupt influence, his mother's political connections. He had the system on his side, but I had something more powerful: the truth evidence and the determination of a father who'd already lost too much. I got out of the car, went inside, started preparing for tomorrow's search. Not hiding anything, I had nothing to hide. Just making sure they wouldn't disrupt the one thing I had left: my mission to save Claire. Charlotte's face was in my mind. Claire's childhood photo in my wallet. Lucas's desperate determination. Diana's evidence. Gordon's loyalty. I had everything I needed. Blake Harrington was about to discover what happens when you threaten a federal prosecutor's daughter. He was about to discover he'd picked a war he couldn't win. Monday morning, 6:00. Loud pounding on my door woke me. 4 Chicago police officers stood on my porch with a search warrant. "Malcolm Sinclair, we need to search the premises. Come in." I stepped aside, fully awake now. They worked through my house methodically: bedroom, office, basement, kitchen. Opening drawers, checking computers, searching for evidence of bribery and witness tampering according to Blake's false allegations. Evidence that didn't exist. I made coffee and watched. After 2 hours of finding nothing, they took me to the police station for questioning. In the interview room, 2 detectives started recording. "Mr. Sinclair, you understand the charges." "I understand they're fabricated to discredit me while I investigate a corrupt district attorney." I kept my voice level. "Gentlemen, I spent 35 years as a federal prosecutor. Do you think I'd leave evidence lying around?" The older detective studied me. "You're saying DA Harrington is targeting you. I'm saying you should ask why a DA would file charges against his wife's father, and check who signed that search warrant." They glanced at each other uncomfortably. 2 hours later, they released me. No charges, no evidence. Blake had nothing. While I was at the station, Gordon made calls. That evening, he came to my house. "Judge Elliot Harrington signed your search warrant." Blake's father: conflict of interest, a massive one. "I contacted 3 judges you worked with during your prosecutor days. They're very interested in how a state judge signed a warrant involving his own son." Gordon showed me his phone. 2 reporters called this afternoon. Someone leaked the story. They're investigating now. Blake had miscalculated. His attempt to intimidate me had exposed his father's corruption instead. The charges will disappear by tomorrow afternoon. DA's office can't risk the exposure. He was right. Tuesday afternoon, I got the call. All allegations withdrawn. Insufficient evidence to proceed. A quiet retreat with no apology. I walked out of the courthouse into a cluster of reporters. "Mr. Sinclair, can you comment?" These allegations were baseless. "I'm glad the truth prevailed." "Thank you." I pushed through toward my car. Then I saw him across the street. Lucas Harrington, and he looked terrible. His face was badly bruised, one eye swollen, his lip cut. He moved carefully, like his ribs hurt. He crossed toward me, limping slightly. "Lucas." I pulled him away from the reporters. "What happened?" "And Blake knows I helped you." His voice was strained. "We had a confrontation last night at our parents' house. A bad one. Your own brother did this. He was screaming about betrayal, about destroying the family." Lucas touched his injured face carefully. "Malcolm, I've never seen him like this. He's not thinking clearly anymore. He's just reacting violent. My chest tightened. Claire, that's why I came. Lucas glanced over his shoulder. If he's willing to do this to me, his brother, over helping you, what will he do to her? We plan to build a case carefully move through proper channels, but we're out of time. He's escalating. I thought about the search warrant, the manufactured charges, Blake's increasingly desperate moves, and now this attacking his own brother. He's cornered, I said quietly. Exactly. Desperate and dangerous. Lucas's voice dropped. We need to get Claire out now before he decides she's become too much of a problem. Your parents, closing ranks. My father's furious at me for betraying Blake. My mother's pretending nothing happened. They're protecting him with everything they have, money, connections, influence. Mike, he lost today. The charges dropped. The conflict of interest exposed, the press asking questions. Why, which makes him more unpredictable. Lucas looked at me with genuine fear. When Blake feels threatened, that's when he's most dangerous. I've known him my whole life. This is when people get hurt. A reporter was heading our way. Lucas stepped back. I'll be in touch, but don't wait, Malcolm. Claire might not have much time. He limped away toward the parking garage. I stood there watching him go. Blake's violence written across his brother's injured face. The search warrant had been Blake's attempt to destroy me before I could destroy him. It had failed. But failure wouldn't make him back down. It would make him more dangerous. And somewhere in this city, my daughter was trapped with a man who just attacked his own brother. A man who was losing control. I got in my car and sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel. Charlotte's face filled my mind. Then Claire at 10 years old, trusting me to protect her. Then Claire at the gala 2 weeks ago, bruised and terrified and pregnant. I'd made Charlotte a promise. I'd broken it by being blind, but tomorrow I was going to fulfill it. Blake Harrington thought he could intimidate me with false charges and corrupt warrants. Thought he could make me back down by exposing his violence, by showing me what he was capable of. He'd miscalculated. Because I wasn't a frightened victim he could control. I was a father who'd already lost too much. A federal prosecutor who'd spent 35 years taking down men who thought they were untouchable, and I had everything I needed now. Diana's evidence of corruption. Lucas's testimony. Judge Elliott's exposed conflicts. Gordon's loyal support connections throughout the system Blake thought he controlled. Tomorrow morning I was going to walk into that situation and extract my daughter from his control. I didn't care about warrants or procedures, or doing everything by the book anymore. Claire was 12 weeks pregnant with a monster's child, trapped in a marriage to a violent man whose family would protect him no matter what he did. She'd suffered long enough. Blake had declared war by coming after me, by manufacturing charges, and sicking police on my home by beating his own brother for helping me. Fine war it was. But tomorrow he was going to learn something about fathers and daughters, about promises made to dying wives, about what happens when you threaten a man's family. Tomorrow I was going to rescue my daughter from that monster. And if Blake tried to stop me, he'd discover exactly what a federal prosecutor with nothing left to lose was capable of. The war had started. Blake had drawn first blood, but tomorrow I was ending it. Wednesday morning, I walked into the federal building downtown. The security guard recognized me immediately. After 35 years working these halls, my face was familiar. He waved me through without asking for identification. U.S. Attorney Douglas Keller was waiting in his office. We had prosecuted organized crime together back in the 9s. He was older now, grayer, but his eyes were still sharp. Malcolm, he said, shaking my hand, show me what you've got. I laid everything across his desk. Diana's files, Lucas's USB drive containing Judge Elliott's corruption records, financial documents, Proving Blake's bribes audio recordings of Blake discussing his plan to imprison Claire. Douglas spent 40 minutes reviewing the material. He didn't rush. He didn't interrupt. When he finally looked up, his expression had hardened. "This is solid," he said. "Federal jurisdiction applies. Corruption conspiracy possible. RICO violations. We can move on this. I need federal protection for my daughter. I said she's pregnant, trapped with Blake, and his behavior is escalating. I can authorize protection," Douglas replied. "But Malcolm will need her testimony. Without it, defense will argue we're relying on circumstantial evidence." "She's under constant surveillance," I said. "Blake monitors her phone, her location, her contacts. I can't reach her safely." Douglas leaned back. "Then we create a window, a moment when Blake isn't watching." That evening, Lucas and I met at my house. Lucas's face still carried bruises from his confrontation with Blake, but he insisted on helping. "Janet sent this," Gordon said, handing me his phone. "Claire's schedule for the week." Claire's assistant had risked everything to send it. If Blake discovered her involvement, she would be in danger. She did it anyway. I scanned the entries. Meetings at the firm, conference calls, a doctor's appointment. Friday afternoon, I said. OBGYN appointment. 130. Blake always goes with her. Lucas said quietly. He doesn't let her go anywhere alone. But he has a meeting with the mayor at 2, Gordon said, pointing to another calendar entry. Campaign funding. He can't miss it. So he leaves her at the clinic, I said. My pulse quickened. How long will he be gone? Mayor meetings run at least 45 minutes, Lucas said. And the office is 20 minutes from the clinic. Blake won't leave early. That's our window, Gordon said, already sketching. Blake drops Claire at 130, leaves around 2. We move in at 2:05. Extract Claire, transport to safe house. Blake returns and finds her gone. Will she come willingly? Lucas asked. She's terrified. I'm her father, I said. She'll trust me. Safe house, Gordon asked. John Hayes, I said. Retired U.S. Marshal. My cousin. Secure location completely off Blake's grid. I should be there. Lucas said she'll need someone from the family who chose her. You can't be seen. I said go to the safe house Thursday and wait. Lucas nodded, emotion visible. Thank you. We spent hours refining the plan. Gordon would drive the extraction vehicle. I would enter the clinic and speak to Claire privately. Federal agents would be positioned nearby. Dr. Bennett, her OB, had been subtly warned and would not interfere. Thursday passed in preparation. Gordon mapped exits and traffic patterns. I reviewed the plan until I could recite it without thinking. Sleep barely came. Friday morning, Lucas reached the safe house. John confirmed everything was secure. Douglas Keller called at 11. Agents are in position. 2 vehicles, 4 agents. If Blake returns early, they intercept. Get Claire out safely. Thank you, I said. Be careful, Douglas added. Desperate men are unpredictable. At 115, I parked across from the clinic. Gordon waited, 3 blocks away. Federal agents covered both ends of the street. At 130 exactly, Blake's black SUV pulled in. I watched him step out, polished and confident. He opened the passenger door for Claire. Even from a distance, I saw the long sleeves, the careful movements, one hand protectively near her stomach. Blake's hand stayed on her lower back as they entered the building, guiding, controlling. 135. They'd be in the waiting room. 145. The exam would begin. Blake would wait in the lobby. I texted Gordon in position. His reply came instantly. Ready. 155. Blake would be checking his watch. My phone buzzed. Douglas Blake exiting now. I watched Blake leave the building. He paused, glanced back once, then drove away. 203. Claire was alone inside, vulnerable, free. I waited 2 minutes. 2:05. I started my engine. Gordon's voice came through the phone. Go. I parked in Blake's former space. In 20 minutes, Blake would be with the mayor. In 21 minutes, Claire would be under federal protection. 2 minutes until I entered the clinic. 2 minutes until I told my daughter she was safe. 2 minutes until everything either worked perfectly or collapsed. This is the moment I've been waiting for 45 minutes to rescue my daughter from that monster. But before I walk into that clinic, I need to know you're still here. Share your thoughts or predictions in the comments below. Will I get Claire out safely? And on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this story so far? Your support helps me create more meaningful content. Please note this story contains fictionalized elements for educational purposes. If it's not for you, feel free to stop here. But if you're ready, let's walk into that clinic together. 15 minutes after Blake drove away felt longer than any stakeout I'd ever done in 35 years as a prosecutor. At exactly 2:05 p.m., I walked into the medical building. The receptionist looked up as I approached the desk. I'm here for Claire Sinclair, I said calmly. I'm her father. She's with Dr. Bennett right now. I know, I interrupted gently. It's a family emergency. The receptionist hesitated. Then her eyes flicked toward the hallway where Dr. Bennett had just appeared. Janet must have warned her. The doctor's expression remained professional, but she nodded once. Mr. Sinclair, she said, come with me. She led me down the corridor, knocked twice on an exam room door, and opened it. Claire sat on the examination table, paper gown covering her clothes, one hand resting protectively over her stomach. When she saw me, confusion flashed across her face, then fear. Dad, what's going on? Blake's going to. Blake is at a meeting with the mayor, I said quickly, stepping inside. Dr. Bennett closed the door behind us. Claire, we have about 40 minutes, maybe less. You need to come with me now. I can't, she whispered. He'll find me. He always does. No, I said, keeping my voice steady. He won't. Federal protection is waiting. A safe house, agents, everything you need to get away permanently. The baby goes with you, I said. Claire, please trust me the way you did when you were 10 years old. And I told you bullies only win when you believe them. Something shifted in her eyes. A memory. A version of me Blake had worked hard to erase. I'm scared, she said. I know, I replied, holding out my hand. But I won't let him hurt you anymore. Or your child. We need to go now. She stared at my hand for several seconds that felt endless. Then she took it. Dr. Bennett stepped forward. I need to check vitals quickly, she said. Federal operation or not, I'm not releasing a pregnant patient without clearance. She worked efficiently. Blood pressure, fetal heartbeat, a brief examination. Her expression tightened as she read the monitor. The baby is healthy, she said. Strong heartbeat, appropriate development for 12 weeks. But your stress levels are dangerously high. Continued exposure puts you at serious risk. Leaving this situation is medically necessary. Can she travel? I asked. Yes, Dr. Bennett replied. But she needs immediate rest, proper nutrition, and prenatal monitoring. I'll forward her records to the secure location. Thank you. She looked at Claire. You're doing the right thing. Claire changed back into her clothes, long sleeves again. I texted Gordon, coming out. 30 seconds. We exited through the front entrance without rushing. Just a father and daughter walking calmly to the curb. Gordon's unmarked sedan waited, engine running. Claire slid into the back seat. I followed. Gordon pulled away smoothly, eyes on every mirror. Any tales? I asked. Agents confirm we're clear, Gordon replied. The drive took 45 minutes. Gordon doubled back twice, ensuring no one followed. Claire remained silent, hand on her stomach, staring out the window. Where are we going? She finally asked. A safe house, I said. Federal protection. He'll report me missing, she said. He'll say you kidnapped me. Let him, I replied. We have evidence. Your testimony, federal jurisdiction. He's finished. She looked at me. How long have you known? 2 weeks, I said. Since the gala, tears filled her eyes. I should have told you sooner. You survived, I said gently. That's what matters. The safe house was a modest ranch home in a quiet suburb. John Hayes met us at the door, alert but calm. House is secure, he said. No digital footprint. Lucas stepped out of the living room. Bruises still marked his face. Claire, he said softly. I'm sorry. I should have protected you. She looked at him, the first Harrington who had chosen her over Blake, and broke down. Lucas held her while she cried. I set up recording equipment with John. That evening, Claire sat before the camera. Whenever you're ready, I said. She took a breath and began. For 90 minutes, she described a year of escalating control, isolation, surveillance. Claire's throat, violence disguised as concern. Blake had sabotaged her birth control. The pregnancy was leverage. He said the baby was insurance, she said. Something to keep me obedient. She described being struck twice in the stomach. Planned commitment, losing custody, disappearing forever. When she finished, she looked exhausted but lighter. Did I do okay? You did perfectly, I said. That night, Claire slept peacefully. My phone lit up with blocked calls. I didn't answer. Gordon texted Blake, filed missing person report. Claims kidnapping. I looked toward my daughter's room. Blake thought the system would protect him. He was wrong. The war was over and it would end on my terms. Saturday morning brought the storm I'd anticipated. At 8:47 a.m., Lucas called. His voice was tight with urgency. Blake just filed a missing person report. And Malcolm, he's filed for emergency psychiatric commitment. He's claiming Claire is mentally unstable, a danger to herself and the baby. I stood at the window of the safe house, watching Claire sleep on the couch in the next room. The morning light caught the fading bruises on her arm. On what grounds? Dr. Curtis Roth signed the evaluation. Blake's college roommate, now a psychiatrist. The paperwork says Claire is delusional, paranoid, experiencing a psychotic break. That she poses an imminent threat to the unborn child. My jaw clenched. Curtis Roth. I remembered him from a charity dinner years ago. Smooth practice, the kind of doctor who'd sign anything for the right price or the right connection. How long do we have? They're coming with the commitment order. Maybe 2 hours. Blake's got a judge lined up, probably someone on the Harrington payroll. I ended the call and immediately dialed Gordon. We need an emergency stay. Federal jurisdiction now. Gordon's response was instant. I'm already on it. Judge Patricia Morrison. She's clean. She's tough. And she owes you one from the Castellano case. I'm heading to her chambers right now with everything we've got. Bejishinch trzydzieści amet. We were in a race against time. Blake's commitment order was set to be executed at noon. 2 psychiatric transport officers and a police escort ready to take Claire by force if necessary. Gordon called at 1103. We got it. Judge Morrison reviewed Claire's video testimony and Dr. Bennett's medical documentation. She's issued an emergency stay on the psychiatric commitment. And Malcolm, she went further. She issued a restraining order against Blake, 500 feet minimum distance from Claire. Relief flooded through me, but only for a moment. What was Blake's reaction? That's the thing. He was in the courthouse when Morrison's clerk served him with the restraining order. He lost it. Malcolm started, shouting about federal overreach, about you corrupting the system. Security had to escort him out, and the whole thing was caught on the courthouse security cameras. I allowed myself a thin smile. Blake Harrington, the polished district attorney, losing control in a federal courthouse. On camera, send me the footage. Already did. By Saturday evening, the first cracks in Blake's facade had appeared. Lucas arrived at the safe house at 7:15 p.m., his face grave. Blake knows he's in trouble. He's calling in every favor, pressuring everyone he can. But people are starting to ask questions. Why would a federal prosecutor's daughter need psychiatric commitment? Why is the DA so desperate to control her? Claire emerged from the bedroom, her hand resting protectively on her stomach. She'd been quiet most of the day, processing everything. He'll keep coming, she said softly. Blake doesn't give up ever. I met her eyes. Neither do I. Sunday brought a different kind of storm. The Chicago Tribune ran a front-page story. Questions surround DA's emergency commitment filing. The article was careful, balanced, but the implications were clear. Below it, a photograph of Blake being escorted from the federal courthouse, his face contorted with rage. By noon, 3 more outlets had picked up the story. Social media exploded with speculation. Gordon called at 2:30 p.m. It's working. Blake's office is in damage control mode. His spokesperson issued a statement about concern for a family member's well-being, but nobody's buying it. The story's got legs now, but I couldn't celebrate. Not yet. Because at 4:47 p.m., Gordon called again. This time his voice was different. Malcolm, we've got a problem. My surveillance team just spotted Blake's BMW circling the general area of the safe house. He's not close enough to have pinpointed the location, but he's searching. He's got at least 2 other vehicles with him. I moved to the window, scanning the street below. John Hayes, Gordon's cousin and our security detail, was already on high alert, his hand near his concealed weapon. How did he narrow it down? So an unknown could be a leak, could be simple deduction. Your name's attached to several properties in this area through various LLCs. He's running them down one by one. Sunday night, the safe house felt like a fortress under siege. Claire was in her room trying to rest. Lucas had returned to his apartment to maintain the appearance of normalcy. Gordon's surveillance team had expanded their perimeter, and I sat in the darkened living room, my phone on the coffee table, reviewing our strategy for Monday. Tomorrow, Claire would give her full testimony to federal investigators. 4 hours of detailed accounting, every incident, every threat, every bruise. Dr. Bennett would provide medical documentation corroborating the abuse. Diana Beaumont would testify under a grant of immunity, providing evidence of Blake's financial crimes and his conspiracy to eliminate Claire as an obstacle to his ambitions. Lucas would deliver 30 years of documentation. Judge Elliot Harrington's systematic corruption. The cases fixed, the bribes paid, the evidence buried, everything was falling into place. But desperate men do desperate things. At 1:23 p.m., I saw the headlights, a dark sedan moving slowly down the street. Not Blake's BMW, but similar, expensive, with tinted windows. It passed the safe house once, then circled back 5 minutes later. I texted Gordon, activity outside. His response was immediate. Team sees it. 3 vehicles total. They're hunting. I stood at the window, watching the sedan make another pass. The driver's face was obscured, but I could see him looking, searching, trying to identify which house might be sheltering his prey. Claire appeared beside me, her arms wrapped around herself. Is that him? I don't know. Maybe someone working for him. She was silent for a long moment. Then what happens tomorrow? Tomorrow we finish this. You tell your story. Diana tells hers. Lucas provides the evidence. And then the federal government brings charges against Blake Harrington and everyone who helped him. And if he finds us tonight, I met her eyes. He won't. John Hayes is former U.S. Marshal Service, and Gordon has 6 people watching this location. Blake would need an army to get through them. But even as I said it, I watched the headlights pass again, slower this time, more deliberate. At 1:47 a.m., I was still awake. Claire had finally fallen asleep. John Hayes was on watch. Downstairs, Gordon's team maintained their surveillance perimeter, and I sat in the darkness, thinking about Monday, about testimony and evidence and federal charges, about the careful construction of a case that would bring down not just Blake Harrington, but the entire corrupt system his family had built. Over 3 decades, everything depended on the next 24 hours. Through the window, I saw the headlights again. A different vehicle this time, a dark SUV. It slowed as it approached, then continued past, but it would be back. Blake was out there somewhere, desperate and dangerous, knowing his world was collapsing. And desperate men, cornered men, are capable of anything. Monday, Claire would testify. Diana would testify. Lucas would provide evidence. The wheels of justice would begin to turn. But first, we had to survive the night. I watched the empty street and waited for dawn. The most dangerous part was just beginning. Monday morning, the federal building. Over the next 3 days, I watched the gears of justice begin to turn. After 35 years as a prosecutor, I knew the machinery well, the deliberate pace, the careful documentation, the weight of every word spoken under oath. But this time, I wasn't inside the process. I was outside it, waiting, watching my daughter walk into rooms. I couldn't enter, knowing her words would determine everything. At 9:00 a.m., Monday, Claire entered the secure interview room on the 7th floor. U.S. Attorney Douglas Keller led the questioning himself, with 2 FBI agents and a court reporter present. Through the reinforced door, I could only imagine what she was saying. 4 hours of detailed testimony. Every incident cataloged, every threat documented, every bruise explained. I paced the corridor. Gordon sat nearby, silent and steady. At 1:07 p.m., the door opened. Claire emerged, her face pale but composed. Her hand instinctively moved to her stomach. 12 weeks. Now, the baby growing, despite everything. She walked straight to me and said quietly, "They believed me, Dad." Relief hit me like a physical force. I pulled her into an embrace, feeling her shoulders shake with silent tears. "Of course they did," I whispered. "You told the truth." Monday afternoon brought Diana Beaumont. Douglas allowed me to observe from the adjacent room behind one-way glass. Diana sat at the conference table in an elegant gray suit, her lawyer beside her, a nervous young associate from one of Chicago's white shoe firms who kept glancing at the immunity agreement like it might vanish. Diana's testimony was clinical, precise, devoid of emotion. She detailed the financial arrangements with cold efficiency amounts, dates, account numbers. Blake had paid her $4 million over 3 years, laundered through her political fundraising operation. In return, she'd provided cover, legitimate-seeming transactions that masked bribes and payoffs. Mr. Harrington became increasingly obsessed with Claire Sinclair in early 2023. Diana said, her voice flat. He viewed her pregnancy as an obstacle to his ambitions. He discussed various options for managing the situation. What options? Keller asked. Commitment to a psychiatric facility, removal of the child after birth through place thousand after birth, custody proceedings. Or she paused, arranging an accident. The room went silent. Diana continued, unmoved. I told him I would have no part in violence. That's when he assured me he had other resources. That's also when I began recording our conversations. She'd given us everything not out of conscience but out of calculation. Diana Beaumont was a survivor, and she knew when to abandon a sinking ship. Tuesday belonged to Lucas. I watched him take his seat, his face showing the strain of the past week. His testimony was different from Diana's, emotional, raw, edged with guilt. My father, Judge Elliot Harrington, has been fixing cases for 30 years. Lucas said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. I've brought documentation of 47 cases where he intervened improperly, dismissed charges, suppressed evidence, altered bail conditions. Always for people who could pay, always for my brother. He walked the investigators through each file, his legal training evident in how he organized the evidence. The pattern was clear. Wealthy defendants dropped charges, payments to offshore accounts, Judge Harrington's signature on every dismissal. "Why are you coming forward now?" one of the FBI agents asked. Lucas met his gaze. "Because I saw what my brother did to Claire. Because I realized I'd been complicit in this corruption my entire career, and because," his voice broke slightly, "because someone has to stop them before they destroy another innocent person." Tuesday afternoon, the financial experts testified. Forensic accountants presented their findings. Money laundering, campaign finance, fraud patterns consistent with organized criminal activity. They'd built a RICO case, racketeer influenced and corrupt organizations, treating the Harrington operation like a mafia family, which in essence it was. Wednesday, the grand jury deliberated. Claire and I waited in Douglas Keller's office watching the clock. 6 hours of deliberation. Gordon joined us at hour 4, bringing coffee no one drank. At 4:47 p.m., Douglas's assistant knocked. They voted. We followed Douglas to the courtroom. The grand jury foreman, a middle-aged woman with steel-gray hair, handed the sealed indictments to the clerk. The clerk read them aloud. Blake Harrington, 18 federal counts, including domestic violence under federal jurisdiction, witness tampering, obstruction of justice, money laundering, racketeering, conspiracy, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping. Judge Elliot Harrington, 9 federal counts, including bribery, corruption, obstruction of justice, and racketeering conspiracy. Arrest warrants issued immediately, effective 5:00 p.m. Wednesday. Claire's hand found mine. For the first time in weeks, I saw something like hope in her eyes. At 5:03 p.m., my phone rang. Gordon's voice was tight. "Malcolm, the FBI is executing the arrest warrants now." "Good. So, but Tom Blake's not at his office, not at home either. His BMW is gone. His phone's been off since this morning. Blake Harrington is running." The world seemed to tilt. A cornered animal is at its most dangerous, and Blake Harrington was nothing if not dangerous. "Where's Claire?" Gordon asked, reading my silence. "Right here with me and Douglas. Federal building security. Keep her there. I'm pulling the surveillance team in tighter around the perimeter. Malcolm, if Blake knows he's about to be arrested, if he's desperate enough." "I know what desperate men do," I said quietly. "I've prosecuted them for 35 years. I looked at Claire, who was watching me with sudden fear in her eyes. She'd heard enough to understand Blake was on the run, and running men either flee or fight. "Find him, Gordon," I said, "before he does something we'll all regret." But even as I said it, I knew the truth. Blake Harrington wasn't running away. He was coming for us. Thursday morning brought the first false lead. At 7:23 a.m., a Wisconsin state trooper reported a black BMW matching Blake's description at a rest stop near the Illinois-Wisconsin border. By the time units arrived, the vehicle was gone. Gordon called at 8:15. "It's a decoy. The BMW belongs to a law school classmate of Blake's, James Whitmore. We're tracking him down now, but I'm betting Blake borrowed the car to throw us off. I sat in Douglas Keller's office at the federal building where Claire had spent the night on a borrowed couch. She was sleeping, finally exhausted from 3 days of testimony and fear. So he's still in Chicago, I said. That's my read. Question is, what's he planning? At 10:47 a.m. Lucas called Malcolm. Blake phoned my mother this morning from a local number, a burner phone. He was rambling, paranoid, talking about being framed, but he's not running. He's still here somewhere in the city. My blood ran cold. What did he say to her? He asked if she knew where Claire was. Mom told him she had no idea. But Malcolm, he's looking for her or for you. He's not thinking clearly. 30 years of being untouchable, and now it's all collapsing. Men like Blake don't handle that well. I knew Lucas was right. I'd seen it dozens of times. Powerful men who couldn't accept their own downfall, who lashed out in increasingly desperate ways. We need to draw him out, I said. By 2:00 p.m. Thursday, I'd made my decision. Absolutely not, Gordon said when I told him the plan. You're not using yourself as bait. He wants me or Claire. I'm not risking her, so it has to be me. Douglas Keller listened to his expression, carefully neutral. If we do this, it has to be controlled. Full surveillance, law enforcement, in position, multiple layers of protection. Fine, set it up. Claire woke as we were finalizing the arrangements. When she understood what I was planning, her face went white. Dad, no. This is insane. He's not going to stop looking. Not until we force his hand. Better it happens on our terms, with every advantage on our side. She started to argue, then stopped. She knew I was right. At 6:00 p.m. Thursday, I drove home. My house in Lincoln Park sat quiet on a tree-in street. The neighbors knew me, the federal prosecutor who'd lived there for 27 years, whose wife had died there, whose daughter had grown up there. Gordon's surveillance team was positioned in 3 unmarked vehicles within a 2-block radius. 2 FBI agents were inside a van across the street. Cameras trained on my front door. Another team was on the next block, ready to respond within seconds. I walked inside, turned on the lights, and waited. At 7:14 p.m., a dark sedan pulled up across the street. Not Blake's BMW. A rental, a gray Ford Fusion with tinted windows. It sat there for 3 minutes, engine running. Then Blake Harrington stepped out. He looked nothing like the polished district attorney I'd seen at the gala 2 weeks ago. His suit was wrinkled, his tie gone, his hair disheveled even from 50 feet away. I could see the wildness in his eyes. I walked out onto the front lawn. Blake saw me and froze. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he crossed the street, walking toward me with the jerky movements of someone running on rage and desperation. You destroyed me. His voice was too loud, carrying across the quiet street. Lights were coming on in neighboring houses. I was going to be Attorney General. I had a path of future, and you destroyed it. I kept my voice calm, controlled. You destroyed yourself, Blake. Every choice was yours. You chose to hurt Claire. You chose corruption. You chose violence. She's mine. He screamed. The baby is mine. You had no right. People aren't property, I said evenly. And you don't get to own anyone, no matter how powerful you think you are. Blake's hand moved to his jacket pocket. Instantly, I saw movement in my peripheral vision. Gordon's team and the FBI agents emerging from their positions, weapons drawn but held low. Don't, I said quietly. Whatever you're thinking, don't do it. Blake's eyes darted around, seeing the agents for the first time. Understanding dawned on his face, the trap, the setup, the inevitable end. You set me up, he whispered. No, you set yourself up. I just gave you the opportunity to surrender. For a moment I thought he would. His hand came out of his pocket empty, and his shoulders sagged. Then something shifted in his expression. A desperate calculation. He ran not toward the agents, but back to his rental car. He was inside and accelerating before anyone could reach him, tires squealing as he swerved around the FBI van and roared down the street. Pursuit authorized. Someone shouted into a radio. 3 vehicles peeled out after him. Gordon's SUV, 2 FBI units, lights blazing. The quiet residential street erupted into chaos. Neighbors emerging onto porches, phones raised recording everything. I stood on my lawn watching the tail lights disappear around the corner. My phone rang. Lucas Malcolm Blake just called me from the road. I could hear sirens. He's saying he's heading for Canada, but his voice, he's not running to somewhere. He's running from reality, a man that delusional that cornered. We need to catch him before he hurts someone or himself. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of it. Blake Harrington, District Attorney Kinsan of one of Chicago's most powerful families, was fleeing through the streets like a common criminal. And somewhere in his fractured mind, he still believed he could escape, that he could outrun federal charges, outrun justice, outrun the consequences of his own actions. They'll get him, I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. And if they don't, I had no answer. Through the phone I could hear Lucas's breathing, uneven and afraid. Not afraid of Blake, afraid for him, the complicated grief of watching a brother destroy himself. I'm sorry, Lucas said quietly. For all of this, for every year I stayed silent. Soon you came forward when it mattered. I told him that's what counts. The sirens were fading now, moving east toward the lakefront. Gordon's voice crackled over my phone's radio app. Suspect heading toward Lakeshore Drive. Speeds exceeding 90 miles per hour. I walked back into my house and closed the door. Somewhere out there, Blake Harrington was running toward Canada, toward oblivion, toward whatever ending desperate men make for themselves. All I could do was wait. After the high-speed chase through Lincoln Park, police found his rental car abandoned near Navy Pier Keys, still in the ignition. Surveillance cameras caught him boarding the Red Line subway at 8:47 p.m., heading north toward Evanston. From there, the trail went cold for 8 hours. Gordon's team worked through the night, coordinating with FBI Transit Authority and local police across 3 states. At 4:23 a.m. Friday, a ticket agent at the Amtrak station in Milwaukee reported selling a northbound ticket to a man matching Blake's description. Paying cash, wearing a baseball cap, pulled low, looking nervous. He's heading for Canada, Gordon said, when he called at dawn. Classic fugitive move. He thinks he can disappear across the border. But Blake Harrington wasn't thinking clearly anymore. And desperate men make mistakes. Friday afternoon brought the first near miss. A motel clerk in Green Bay, Wisconsin, recognized Blake from the news alerts that had been flooding every law enforcement channel. The Sunrise Motor Lodge, $40 a night, cash only. Blake had checked in at 11 a.m., using the name Robert Harrison, barely even trying to hide. Local police surrounded the building by 2:30 p.m. When they breached the room at 2:47, Blake was gone out. The bathroom window on foot vanished into the surrounding residential streets. He'd left everything behind: a duffel bag with clothes, a burner phone, and a half-eaten sandwich. The phone's call log showed 3 numbers: his mother, Helena, his brother, Lucas, and one unidentified Milwaukee area code. Gordon had the unknown number traced within an hour. A pharmacy. Blake had called asking about medications for anxiety using a fake prescription number. Another sign of his deteriorating state. By Saturday, Blake's face was everywhere. Every news channel, every website, every social media feed. Chicago DA on the run. Federal manhunt enters day 3. The story had everything: power, corruption, domestic violence, a dramatic escape. Cable news couldn't get enough. Helena Harrington appeared on Channel 7 News at 4:00 p.m. Saturday, impeccably dressed, projecting wounded dignity. "My son is innocent," she said, her voice trembling perfectly. "Malcolm Sinclair has orchestrated a vendetta against our family. Blake is frightened, confused. He's not a criminal. He's a victim of a corrupt system." I watched from the safe house, Claire sitting beside me, her hand protective over her 2-week pregnant belly. "She's still defending him." Claire whispered. "After everything, some people can't see what they don't want to see," I said quietly. Saturday night, Gordon played me a recording. Blake had called Helena from a public payphone in Duluth, Minnesota at 9:34 p.m. The FBI had Helena's phones tapped, standard procedure for fugitive cases, and the conversation was chilling. Blake's voice was barely recognizable, high-pitched and frantic. "They're lying about me, Mother. All of them. I am the law. I've dedicated my life to justice, and they're destroying me over nothing. Blake, darling, you need to come home. We'll get lawyers. The best lawyers." "No, they've bought the lawyers. They've bought everyone. Malcolm Sinclair has corrupted the entire system. He's poisoned Claire against me. The baby, Mother. The baby is mine. And Chayender Ninder, and he's trying to steal." The call ended abruptly, likely Blake had seen someone approaching, spooked, and run again. Gordon's face was grim. "He's completely delusional, paranoid, grandiose, losing touch with reality. That makes him unpredictable and dangerous." Sunday brought another close call. A gas station attendant in Bemidji, Minnesota, 30 miles from the Canadian border, called 911 at 2:17 p.m. Blake had stopped for fuel, paying cash, buying energy drinks, and a road map. By the time state troopers arrived at 231, Blake was gone, heading north on Highway 71 toward International Falls. The net was tightening. Every law enforcement agency within 200 miles was mobilized. Border crossings were on high alert. Blake's face was the top priority for every cop in 3 states. He had maybe hours left, maybe less. Monday morning, 5:47 a.m., the call came. Blake Harrington had approached the border crossing at Rainy River, Ontario, on foot, carrying a backpack, using a fake ID that identified him as Brian Henderson. The border agent, a 23-year veteran named Patricia Sullivan, recognized him immediately from the federal alerts. She processed his documents slowly, asking routine questions while signaling her supervisor. U.S. Marshals had been stationed at every border crossing within 100 miles. They were there in 4 minutes. Blake saw them coming. He tried to run. He made it maybe 50 feet before Marshal Dennis Grant, a former college linebacker, tackled him to the ground on the Canadian side of the checkpoint. The arrest was clean, professional, by the book. Grant read Blake his rights while 2 other marshals secured him. "You have the right to remain silent. You should probably use it." Blake was screaming about his rights, about persecution, about Malcolm Sinclair destroying his life. The words tumbled out incoherently, the rant of a man who'd spent 4 days running on fear and delusion. By 7:00 a.m., Blake was in federal custody, being transported back to Chicago in a U.S. Marshal's vehicle. Gordon called me at 7:23 a.m. "It's over. They got him." I closed my eyes, feeling something unknot in my chest. Beside me, Claire had woken when my phone rang. She was watching me, her expression a mixture of relief and exhaustion. "Where is he now?" "En route to Chicago. He'll be processed at the Metropolitan Correctional Center by noon. Maximum security, no bail. The arraignment is scheduled for Wednesday." I looked at Claire. "He's in custody. It's over." But even as I said it, I knew the truth. This wasn't over. Not really. Blake was in federal prison held without bail facing 18 federal charges, but the trial would take months. Claire was 20 weeks pregnant now halfway through. She'd have to face him in court, testify, publicly relive everything while the media documented every moment. Gordon seemed to read my thoughts. He squeezed my shoulder. "You saved her, Malcolm." I shook my head. "Not yet. Not until he's convicted, and she can breathe freely. Until then, we keep fighting." Claire's hand found mine. "We keep fighting," she echoed quietly. Through the window, dawn was breaking over Chicago gold and pink across Lake Michigan. Blake Harrington was finally in custody, but the real battle was just beginning. Over the next 5 months, as Claire's belly slowly rounded with new life, we waited for justice to move at its familiar, agonizing pace. The waiting was excruciating. Each passing day was a reminder that Blake Harrington still existed, still breathed, still cast a shadow over our lives, even from behind bars. November bled into December, bringing a bitter Chicago winter. Blake was held at the Metropolitan Correctional Center, downtown Maximum. Security, no bail. His legal team, 5 attorneys from one of the city's most powerful firms, filed motion after motion, claims of prosecutorial misconduct, requests for a change of venue, demands to suppress evidence. Every motion was denied. Blake requested solitary confinement. He refused all visitors except his attorneys. Even Helena, his mother, was turned away in mid-November. The guard told her Blake had left explicit instructions. No family contact. "He's punishing her," Gordon said when he told me, blaming her for failing to protect him. Classic narcissist behavior. Everyone else is responsible. January brought a different trial. Judge Elliot Harrington faced federal court at last. I attended every day, sitting quietly in the gallery, watching a man who had corrupted Chicago's justice system for 30 years finally answer for it. The evidence Lucas provided was devastating. 47 documented cases of corruption, meticulously recorded. Bribes, fixed rulings, suppressed evidence, a timeline spanning 3 decades of selling justice to the highest bidder. The jury deliberated for 8 hours, guilty on all 9 counts. Judge Elliot Harrington wept openly as the verdict was read. 2 weeks later, he was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. If he survived the sentence, he would be nearly 90 when released. February and March dismantled Helena's social world. The Harrington name, once synonymous with power and prestige, became untouchable. Charity boards quietly removed her. Country club memberships were suspended. Invitations vanished. I felt no satisfaction watching it happen. Helena had enabled her son's cruelty through willful blindness, but she was still a mother watching her life collapse. She tried again to see Blake in March. Again, he refused. Lucas told me she had begun drinking heavily alone in the Lincoln Park mansion that once hosted political fundraisers. She keeps asking how this happened. Lucas said, as if she doesn't remember every warning sign she ignored. April brought renewal. Claire moved into a new apartment 3 blocks from my home. We had searched carefully, safe, quiet, close to schools for the future. Rose Charlotte Sinclair. Claire chose the name during her 2-4-week ultrasound. Rose for new beginnings. Charlotte for the grandmother she would never meet but whose strength she would inherit. Claire began therapy with Dr. Ann Devlin, a trauma specialist. Twice a week, 90 minutes at a time, unraveling years of manipulation and fear. "It's hard," Claire admitted one evening, her hand resting on her swollen belly. "I keep blaming myself. I was a lawyer. I should have known. Abuse doesn't announce itself." I told her it works by making strong people doubt reality. She wiped her tears. "I want Rose to grow up knowing her mother was strong." "You are strong." I said. "You survived." May brought the final developments. The prosecution offered Blake a plea deal, 25 years in federal prison, no parole before 20. In exchange, he would plead guilty to 7 charges. His lawyers urged him to accept. Blake refused. He truly believes he's innocent, his lead attorney told Douglas Keller. He sees himself as the victim, so the trial was set. June 3, 2024. Judge Margaret Brennan presiding. Claire would testify. So would Diana Beaumont, Dr. Laura Bennett, Janet Fitzgerald, and 15 others. The trial was expected to last 3 weeks. The week before trial was preparation. Douglas Keller and his team rehearsed Claire's testimony. Mock cross-examinations, hard questions, emotional triggers. They'll try to break you, Douglas warned. Stay calm. Stick to facts. Each session drained her. Each session made her stronger. The night before trial, Claire called at 2117 a.m. Dad, I can't sleep. I'm coming. I found her on the couch wrapped in a blanket. Rose moved beneath her nightgown, small feet pressing against her ribs. What if I freeze? Claire whispered. Then we pause, I said. And you continue. You're not that frightened woman anymore. You're a mother protecting her child. She leaned against me, her hand on her belly. Tell me it will be okay. I can't promise that, I said. But I promise you won't be alone. Monday morning, June 3, 2024. We stood at the base of the courthouse steps. Reporters crowded around us. Claire wore a navy dress, her pregnancy unmistakable. She looked up at the stone building, the words "Equal Justice Under Law" carved above the entrance. Ready? I asked. Rose kicked visible through the fabric. Rose needs to know her mother was brave. Claire said. Let's go, Dad. We climbed the steps together. My daughter, my hero, walking into the hardest testimony of her life. Not alone. Never alone again. I'd attended hundreds of trials over 35 years. But watching my pregnant daughter stand in the witness box against her abuser, that was a different kind of agony. The trial began June 3, 2024, Chicago's Dirksen Federal Building. Judge Margaret Brennan presiding, a no-nonsense jurist known for running tight courtrooms and tolerating zero theatrics. The gallery was packed. I sat front row directly behind the prosecution table where Claire could see me when she needed strength. Week 1 brought financial testimony. Forensic accountants detailed the money laundering operation, $1.4 million moving through Diana Beaumont's fundraising organization structured to avoid detection, routed through shell companies in Delaware and the Cayman Islands. They presented bank records, transaction logs, email, correspondence. The pattern was undeniable: bribes disguised as consulting fees, payoffs masked as campaign contributions. Systematic corruption of the district attorney's office. Blake sat at the defense table in a navy suit, expression carefully neutral. But I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his hands clenched beneath the table. His lead attorney, Peter Walsh, a silver-haired veteran of white-collar defense, tried to suggest legitimate political fundraising. The accountants demolished that argument with patient, detailed testimony. By Friday, the financial case was airtight. Week 2 brought Diana Beaumont. She took the stand in an understated gray suit. Her testimony: clinical dates, amounts, conversations delivered with the emotional investment of reading a grocery list. Douglas Keller displayed text messages on courtroom screens. Blake, March 2023. Claire's situation becoming problematic. Need options. Diana, what kind of options, Blake? Permanent solutions. We've discussed this. Diana, I don't do violence. Find someone else. The jury listened. Faces impassive but attentive. Walsh tried to suggest Diana was lying to save herself, but the text messages, recordings, bank records, all corroborated her testimony exactly. She was unshakable. Wednesday brought Lucas. Blake's younger brother looked exhausted, but steady as he swore the oath. My brother has been protected his entire life, Lucas testified. Our father, Judge Elliot Harrington, fixed cases for Blake starting in law school. An assault charge in 2001 dismissed. A DUI in 2005 expugned. Allegations from 3 former girlfriends all settled with money and non-disclosure agreements. Lucas presented 47 case files documenting Judge Elliott's corruption. Each showed the same pattern: serious charges, intervention by Judge Harrington, cases dismissed, payments flowing offshore. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Douglas asked. Lucas's voice cracked. Because I was a coward. Because I loved my brother despite everything. But then I saw what he did to Claire. I saw her fear. And I realized if I stayed silent, I was just as guilty. Walsh's cross-examination was brutal, painting Lucas as a jealous brother seeking revenge. Lucas never wavered. I'm here because it's the right thing to do, he said quietly, even if it costs me everything. Blake stared at his brother with undisguised hatred. Week 3. Claire. Wednesday, June 19th, the day I'd been dreading. Claire was 30 weeks pregnant, visibly uncomfortable. She wore a simple blue dress, her hair pulled back. She wanted the jury to see her as she was, vulnerable but strong. She walked to the witness stand, one hand supporting her lower back, the other on her belly. As she settled into the chair, she found my eyes. I nodded. Douglas began gently. Miss Sinclair, when did you first meet Blake Harrington? April 2022, at a legal symposium in Milwaukee. He was charismatic, confident. It felt validating to have someone that successful pay attention to me. Over 3 hours, she walked through the timeline. The romantic courtship that became subtle control, monitoring her phone, her movements, isolating her from family. The first shove in September 2022. His apology, his tears, his promises. It happened again and again. He used the pregnancy to control me. Claire said, tears streaming but voice steady. He said if I left, he'd have me declared mentally unfit, that he'd take the baby. I believed him. He was the district attorney. He had power connections. I had nothing. Douglas showed medical records. Dr. Bennett's documentation of bruises, a fractured rib, photographs Claire had secretly taken. The jury looked at Blake. Several faces showed disgust. Then came Walsh's cross-examination. Miss Sinclair, you're a highly educated attorney, correct? Yes. And yet you expect this jury to believe you were helpless. I wasn't physically imprisoned, but Mr. Harrington controlled every aspect of my life. He monitored my phone, email, bank accounts. Leaving would have put me and my baby in immediate danger. Walsh pressed. Do you hate my client, Miss Sinclair? She was quiet for a moment. Then no, I pity him because he destroyed himself. All the talent, all the opportunity, he threw it away because he couldn't accept that people aren't possessions. That's not hate. That's tragedy. And that's when Blake snapped. He shot to his feet, face purple with rage. You're lying. You're nothing. Without me, nothing. The courtroom erupted. Judge Brennan's gavel cracked like thunder. U.S. Marshals grabbed Blake as he thrashed and shouted, I loved you. And you destroyed me. They dragged him from the courtroom, his screams echoing. Every camera caught it. Blake Harrington losing control, completely confirming every allegation with his own rage. Claire sat in the witness box, tears streaming but expression calm. When she stepped down, I was there. I held her as she shook, whispering, You did beautifully. Week 4 brought weak defense testimony. Character witnesses praised Blake's legal work. But after Claire's testimony, after Blake's outburst, none of it mattered. Closing arguments came Thursday, June 27th. Douglas laid out the case with devastating clarity. This is a man who used his power to abuse, to corrupt, to destroy. The evidence is overwhelming. Justice demands accountability. Walsh tried to suggest reasonable doubt to paint Blake as a victim of conspiracy. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. At 4:47 p.m., they returned. On all counts, we find the defendant guilty. 18 federal charges. Guilty on every single one. Claire's hand found mine. She was crying but smiling. Relief and exhaustion and vindication. Sentencing was set for 2 weeks later. The prosecution recommended 40 years. As we left, the courthouse, reporters swarmed. They wanted Claire's statement. She stepped to the microphones, 30 weeks pregnant, trembling from the verdict, and spoke with quiet strength. Today, justice was served. But the fight isn't over. Thousands of survivors are still trapped, still afraid. We need stronger laws, better protections, a system that believes victims before tragedy strikes. I'll spend the rest of my life fighting for them. My daughter no longer a victim, an advocate now. Charlotte would have been so proud. Justice comes in many forms. Sometimes it's a verdict. Sometimes it's a sentence, and sometimes it's a child's laughter in a garden where roses bloom again. 2 weeks after the verdict, we returned to the federal courthouse for sentencing. The courtroom was quieter this time. Fewer reporteros, less spectacle, just the necessary witnesses to watch justice complete. Banake stood before Judge Margaret Brennan in an orange jumpsuit, wrists shackled, a shadow of the man who'd once commanded authority in this very building. His expensive suit was gone. His polished confidence was gone. Everything that made him Blake Harrington, District Attorney, was stripped away. Judge Brennan's voice was steady, measured, and utterly unforgiving. Mr. Harrington, you held a position of public trust. You were sworn to uphold the law, to protect the vulnerable, to serve justice. Instead, you abused your power, betrayed that trust, and terrorized the woman who loved you. This court has no mercy for you. The sentence: 35 years in federal prison. No parole eligibility for 30 years. Blake was 43 years old. He'd be 73 before he could even apply for release if he lived that long. As the marshals led him away, Blake looked back once. Not at Claire, at me. His expression was empty, defeated. He was no longer the district attorney, just prisoner 847-293. The pieces of Blake's empire scattered in the months that followed. Helena Harrington died 18 months later, alone in the Lincoln Park mansion, a bottle of pills and an empty wine glass on her nightstand. She'd chosen oblivion over accountability. Diana Beaumont moved to Phoenix under a new name, living quietly on the immunity deal that saved her from prison. Judge Elliot Harrington died in federal prison in his 4th year. Lucas changed his name to Lucas Brooks and now works with a domestic violence advocacy organization. He's found his redemption in service. At 3:47 a.m., on September 12, 2024, Claire's water broke. I drove her to Northwestern Memorial Hospital through empty pre-dawn streets, her hand gripping mine during contractions. "Dad," she said as we pulled into the emergency entrance, "I'm scared not of the birth, but of being a mother alone." "You're not alone," I told her. "And you're nothing like him. Rose is going to know love and safety every single day of her life." 14 hours later, at 5:52 p.m., Rose Charlotte Sinclair entered the world. 7 pounds 4 ounces. Dark hair and blue eyes. When the nurse placed her in my arms for the first time, I felt something crack open in my chest. Looking at Rose's small face, I made a new promise. "I protected your mother. Now I'll protect you too. The first year was hard. Claire returned to work in January 2025, joining a nonprofit legal organization focused on domestic violence survivors. She testified before the Illinois legislature in March advocating for stronger protections. In May 2025, Claire's law passed requiring district attorneys to recuse themselves from cases involving family members or intimate partners. Small changes save lives. Rose grew, 12 months old by July 2025, crawling, then walking, then running with the determined waddle of a toddler, discovering the world. She laughed, easily loved books, and had absolutely no fear of the dog next door. She would never know Blake Harrington, never carry the weight of his crimes. She was just Rose, loved, safe, free. Claire started dating again in June 2025. A teacher named Michael, kind and patient, who understood when Claire needed space. Healing isn't linear. There were bad days, panic attacks, nightmares that left Claire shaking. But there were more good days. Days when Claire laughed. Days when Rose took her first steps. Days when the past felt distant. Sunday afternoon, July 20th, 2025. My backyard in Lincoln Park, where Charlotte had planted roses 30 years ago. They died after she passed, but 2 years ago Claire and I replanted them. Now they bloomed everywhere, red and pink and white, filling the air with their sweet scent. Rose toddled through the garden in a yellow sundress, chasing butterflies. Her laughter echoed off the houses. I knelt by the rose bushes, pruning dead stems. I'd see I kept my promise. I said quietly to Charlotte, to whatever part of her still existed in this garden. They're both safe now. Rose stumbled over to me, clutching a dandelion in her tiny fist. Opa flower. To her it was the most beautiful thing in the world. Claire emerged from the house carrying lemonade, wearing jeans, and one of my old Northwestern law sweatshirts. She looked younger than she had in years. The haunted look in her eyes was gone, replaced by something cautious, but real contentment. Rose, don't bother Grandpa while he's gardening, she called. She's not bothering me, I said. She's helping 3 generations in Charlotte's garden. Mom would have loved her, Claire said softly. She does love her, I replied. Wherever she is, I never believed in fate until that October night when I saw fear in my daughter's eyes at the gala. That night I chose to fight, and in that fight we found our way back to peace. Blake Harrington is prisoner 847293, now aging in a cell. But we're here in Charlotte's garden, safe, healing, growing. Rose Charlotte will grow up knowing only love and safety. That's Charlotte's legacy. That's Claw's victory. That's our peace. The roses bloom, Rose laughs, and somewhere I believe Charlotte smiles. We made it home, my love. We made it home. Looking back at this family story, I realized that revenge was never the goal. A father's love transformed into a dad revenge only because the system failed to protect my daughter when she needed it most. But let me be clear. Don't wait like I did. Don't miss the signs. Don't let your child suffer in silence because you're too busy, too distracted, or too trusting of someone's polished exterior. I spent 35 years prosecuting criminals. Yet I nearly lost Claire because I didn't see what was right in front of me. The bruises she hid, the fear in her eyes at that gala, the canceled lunches and avoided calls. Every family story has warning signs. Learn to read them before tragedy forces your hand. This wasn't just a dad revenge against one man. It was a fight against a system that protects the powerful and silences victims. It was about ensuring that Rose Charlotte would grow up in a world where justice means something. God gives us strength in our darkest moments, but He also expects us to act when we see injustice. Faith without action is empty. My advice: trust your instincts. When someone you love changes, becomes withdrawn, fearful, controlled, don't accept their excuses. Dig deeper. Ask harder questions. And when they finally trust you enough to tell the truth, believe them immediately and fight with everything you have. This family story taught me that love isn't passive. It's fierce. It's relentless. And sometimes it requires a dad revenge that looks like cold, calculated justice. Not for satisfaction, but for survival and healing. If this story resonated with you, please leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel for more powerful narratives, and share this video with anyone who might need to hear it. Your engagement helps these important stories reach those who need them most. Thank you for staying with us until the end. And a final reminder, the stories you'll hear on this channel include fictionalized elements created for educational purposes. If this content isn't for you, feel free to explore other videos that better suit your preferences.